Harry, go.
Go.
Rush. 11 to 15. You start.
Yeah, so last time we did 16, 17, 18, and 19. And, I had made my picks, and then I started after hearing your guys' picks and reactions, then I was kind of reevaluating whether or not I had really put enough thought into it. And so I started listening more to the albums, and especially
Mhm.
because um, this week we picked out five, the next five albums, and three of them I was pretty sure about, and then there were two more spots. I had three albums for the two spots, and I couldn't figure out which of the three albums I liked the most because this gets like harder and harder, right? Like
Sure.
it's kind of easy to pick the bottom four, but as you get closer to the top, then I had to like go through and listen to the album, and I found myself falling into this trap where like I was listening. So one of the ones for this week that I have was Test for Echoes, right? And I'm like, well, I should really go back and listen to Test for Echoes again to make sure I'm putting it in the right spot. And listening to the albums, you start liking the album more. You're like, whoa, this album's got to be higher, right? So like when I listened to the album, I started pushing it up in the ranks, and then I realized I'd listened to a few albums, and every album that I listened to was like my new favorite Rush album. So you got to be a little bit careful about that, where like the last Rush album you listen to isn't suddenly your favorite, because they have just so many great albums. And the great thing about Rush in general as a band is almost every album is different. I mean, they went through like certain phases, but really every album has like a unique sound, and each album has like great things about it. Like they all have at least one really great song. So I did try and go back and listen to them and really put a little bit more thought about which ones I thought were actually better and
It's
why.
a tough thing to do. It's a really tough thing to do to
Yeah,
rank them.
and it gets harder
It
as you
gets
go.
harder. You think it's going to be just like you go through it like that. I ended up
Yeah,
reordering my list a number of times, and Sean
yeah,
and I did the Dream Theater rankings. I think Sean changed his top three at the last minute too. So it's like
yeah. I'm
it's
not. I'm
hard
not
to,
even sure about my number one.
I
So
know it's hard. It's hard. And well, that's what makes it fun, though. Just
yeah.
talking about it and getting into the albums again and listening. So who wants to start? I mean, I don't know if you reordered yours over the past couple of days. Let me know. Just tell me which albums you guys want to talk about first.
I mean, I didn't change my order.
Oh, you didn't change your order. Okay.
No, no, no. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with the order. I could go first. My number 15, that was Fly
Which
By Night.
Fly By Night, right?
Yeah, and like we're getting up into the top 15 albums, but this is still an album I think is really good. It's just I think they have 14 better albums. I mean, it's got a lot of. I mean, it's By Tour and the Snow Dog is a song I love, and we were talking last week. I forgot about how much I love Beneath, Between, and Behind. That was like a great song on Exit Stage Left. That's originally from Fly By Night. So a lot of great songs. It's just they still have a lot of other great albums.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I had this. I believe I had this also number 15, and I'm gonna bring up. I'm gonna share my screen real quick with the track listing. And really, geez, what more can you say? I mean, you got some great ones on here. You got by touring the Snow Dog, which is an instant classic, showcases some of Neil's drumming skills on the toms. Also, one of my favorites from Rush is In the End, which is the last song, obviously. Great
Yeah,
classic rocker, great classic rock guitar by Alex. I think there's some great guitar on this album. I think there's some great poppy vocals with Anthem and Fly By Night. I love the fact that this is still in that era that Geddy Lee can still go really, really high, and
yeah,
he makes it sound fun and poppy on both Anthem and Fly By Night. I like the Ayn Rand references on Anthem. I know that was a big deal for these guys back in the 70s. I was one of the
yeah,
authors that they like to read back then. So I don't know. That's my number 15. I still listen to it. Sean mentioned Rivendell not being an all-time GOAT. I'd have to agree with him on that. But overall, I think a pretty strong album, given the fact
Yeah.
that it's only their number. They're only their second release.
Right. I just think about this band, how fortunate Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson were to need a new drummer, to need a new drummer, and basically have. I mean, a lot of people consider Neil to be the greatest drummer in rock, and this guy walks in, an incredible drummer, just an unbelievable lyricist, just incredible lyricist. To have somebody like that walk in and audition for your band, they got to really be thanking their lucky stars.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he comes into the band and totally redefines their sound. He starts writing all the lyrics right away.
Yeah.
He's well read, even at a very young age. He's 21 or 22 years old, I guess, at the time.
Yeah.
He's playing double bass drums like nobody's ever played before. He's playing lightning fast fills. He's playing. The band sounds much tighter. Just a much better sound for the band on this album. Yeah. Much improved from the first record. Sean, I think your number 15 was refresh my memory, but I believe your number 15 was
Caress of Steel.
Caress of Steel. So I'm going to open that up, and why don't you take it away right now?
Okay, so this one, it's an interesting album. Caress of Steel came out in, I think, 1975, if I'm correct. I like Bastille Day. It's a well-executed song, and the interesting about this song now is if you listen to that now more than ever, if you've seen the movie Napoleon, the first scene in that movie, that's the movie came out a year or two ago with Joaquin Phoenix. When I was listening to this song the other day, I was visualizing that it was one of the first scenes in the movie where Marie Antoinette is going to the guillotine. And then, so I'm listening to this as I'm having that visual in my head. And it's just really great experience now when I listen to that song. So maybe that's going to have a little bit more relevance now that movie just came out. But it's a great song nonetheless. I think the lyrics become more meaningful and enjoyable, when you have that visual content in mind from the movie. I love the progressive rock kind of exclamation point at the end of the song with that obsessive compulsive bit underneath the melodic lead by Alex Lifeson. As I thought about it, Caress of Steel must be, and I don't know if you guys, Barry and Neil, if you guys have any thoughts on this one, but Caress of Steel, I just figured this out the other day when I was listening to this. The Caress of Steel must be a reference to the steel guillotine cutting into, not to get graphic here, but cutting into Marie Antoinette's neck. Maybe I'm reaching here. I don't know. It had to be like, what does Caress of Steel mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. So you guys talked about the Fountain of the Lamnef being this just big mess, okay, and how it was arranged was the main issue there. There's some good things with Lamnef. The best part of this album for me is the Necromancer. I feel like this song in particular gets unfairly lumped in with Fountain of the Lamnef. This is really their first epic of more than 10 minutes that really works. And if you listen to this thing, it's arranged in 3 parts. I would argue this is one of Rush's most underappreciated songs. It's 12 and a half minutes long. We hear Geddy using that creepy narrator's voice leading into the dark melodic opening part. Then you get the extended jam with Alex using some cross-phasing throughout his solo. Again, great job by Terry Brown on the mix on this one. The band plays with a ton of conviction here throughout the instrumental section. The instrumental section, I looked this up on Google because I'm not a musical expert here. Okay, I'm not a musician. I'm not an expert. But the instrumental section is a 5/4 time signature, which seems to lend itself well to giving the song some more intensity. Then you have the resolution and the simplicity of the closing section, which is called Return of the Prince. That's a 3-chord major progression. It goes from E to B to A back to B. And this provides a feeling of that it gives you that triumphant resolution feeling, contrasted against the melancholia and the tension created in the opening and instrumental parts. Another great solo by Alex Lifeson to finish it off. Really memorable solo there by Alex Lifeson. So that on the strength of the Necromancer, that's why I pushed this up a little bit past the upper.
You're making me reevaluate. I had it at the bottom, but yeah, it is a great song.
Yeah. So that's my number 15. You guys have done a good job with parsing out the issues with Fountain of the Lamb.
Yeah.
But I love the Necromancer. That's a good one.
Good stuff. All right, so we'll move on to Barry's number 14, which sad to say is one of my top 10, not in my bottom 10. And
Yeah.
we're going to go to Rush's 2112, the 1976 release. Take it away.
So, I mean, this was obviously a gigantic album for Rush, like their first real massive success, and basically changed everything for the band. And I like the song, but again, we're getting into, there's just other albums that I like more. And I just, there's nothing that I think is really awesome in 2112. I mean, I like the concept, and the concept is very kind of new, but as far as just the quality of the material, it's okay. I just don't think it compares well against even like Farewell to Kings. I just see as such a big leap beyond this album. So I do like it, but it's not really an album I listen to a lot.
All right. Okay, so I can see you made some good points there. I have a little bit higher on my list. Right now, we're going to go to Sean's number 14, which is Test for Echo, the 1996 release. Sean, you're number 14. Take it away.
It's not your turn? I thought.
Huh?
It's not your turn? I thought it was your turn.
Oh, we have a specific order?
Oh, no. Well, I did Caress. I did my 15, and I'll go now if you want. It's up. You want me to do mine now? Test for Echo?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. All right. So, all right. Yeah. So this one, this is one of those albums I've listened to. It may be the Rush album I've listened to the most. Maybe because we had that almost a 6-year gap between Rush albums. This came out in '96, and then we had to wait about 5.5, almost 6 years for the next one to come out. So this might be the Rush album I listened to the most. The way I would sum this album up, and I love this album, but there's a lot of really good songs on this album. But I can't say there's one great song that blows you away.
Right.
I do appreciate the witty lyrics in Half the World. That's a great song, very well written. The lyrics on that one, it's not a complex song, but it works for me. We get Rush's take on the O.J. Simpson trial in Test for Echo. For me, the production here is heavier than what they had going on the albums in the late 80s, early 90s. Alex Lifeson sounds more involved here than on albums like Power Windows and Hold Your Fire. Great example of this is the song Time and Motion, where the band is switching between a 10/8 time signature and a 12/8 time signature. It gives the song a really cool prog metal feel. I love the heavy riffing on this song and the kind of spontaneous in-your-face guitar solo that Alex Lifeson gives us there. Also on Test for Echo, there's some really cool melodic rock numbers. Color of Right and Totem are both really good songs. Driven is a really heavy one where you get that really good bottom end that Geddy and Alex had going at the time, and they weave in Alex's acoustic guitar, which we didn't hear too much of in the mid to late 80s. And that goes underneath the vocals on the bridge section, giving the song some really cool dynamics. Last but not least, I got to tell you guys, Dog Ears, from a lyrical standpoint, it's not my thing. Sounds a little bit ridiculous. He's talking about animals again. I'm just not really into the lyrics about animals. I think Geddy and Alex would have told Neil, hey, enough of the lyrics about animals, buddy. I mean, you could point to something like the Animals album by Pink Floyd, but that's really about Animal Farm, which is a metaphor for something else. So anyway, but that's the only thing on the album that I don't like. Resist is a really good melodic song that comes across well live. So I have Test for Echo as my number 14.
Yeah, that was one. Test for Echo. That was one where I listened to it. Initially, I had it like kind of way down there, but there's just a lot of good songs on the album. Test for Echo is a great song. That song Resist has some great lyrics, and like you said, it comes off really well live. Then the other one,
I have that a little. I have Power Window. I'm sorry. I have Test for Echo a little higher.
yeah, I had a little higher too, because what happened was I went and listened to the whole album, and then I just started bumping it up just because there's a lot of great songs. That song "Time in Motion" is an awesome song.
Yeah,
Driven
so
is
my,
another one. Driven is another one that comes off really well. I forget which live album that's on, but there's some live album where Driven comes off. The bass part just comes off so great.
I have my number 14. We're gonna go to is Power Windows. This for me was a little bit too much keyboards. Does have some of my favorite Rush songs. Does have a couple of my favorite lyrical Rush contributions from Neil. And one is the Big Money, where he comes in, he says, "Big Money got a heavy hand, Big Money take control, Big Money got a mean streak, Big Money got no soul." One of my favorites from Neil.
Yeah.
Love the lyrics on Mystic Rhythms, and I like his use of electronic percussion on that song as well. I think some of that is based on his biking experience and listening to local music while in Africa. It was fun to see him do that live as well. I like the storytelling style of the Manhattan Project lyrics. I think that was also a little bit informative if you hadn't heard much about that to date. Sometimes I think on this album that the keyboards overtake the guitars a little bit too much, and Alex really has struggles on this album to find his place, which wasn't easy for him, I know, on both Power Windows and Hold Your Fire. A good example of this is Grand Designs, where the keyboards might be a little bit too overpowering. Not a ton of bass on that song either. Otherwise, Marathon has a nice funky bass part, which I can get into, with some nice interplay between Neil and Geddy during the guitar solo. Also like Middletown Dream lyrics, which reminds me a little bit of Signals and Neil's kind of iconic dreamer idea, and the dreamer that he talks about on Signals, he kind of alludes to again in Middletown Dreams. That's my number 14 Rush album, Power Windows.
Yeah, I had this a little bit higher, and just because there's just so many great songs on the album. There's this one song, Emotion Detector, where so there's obviously tons of keyboards on this album, but Emotion Detector, I mean, it almost sounds like a symphonic intro where they have like many different parts, including the guitar and the keyboard and drums, and kind of like playing off of each other, and just very creative, beautiful intro to a song. And then it's just like, there's just so much high quality material at this point. Like, so many songs are all well written. The music is all
Geddy
solid.
thinks this is a high point in their career. He points to 2112, Moving Pictures, Power Windows, and the last album. Can't remember the name of it.
Clockwork Angels. Yeah.
Clockwork Angels. He points to those as some of the highlights of their career. So that's definitely one he would agree with you on.
Yeah, I mean, the album is just so well done, and there's just so. I mean, I had this problem where I was trying to. I had 2 spots for 3 albums, but the album is just so well done. There's so many great parts of it. There's this song Grand Designs where the bass and drums are kind of playing this really cool, these cool fills at the end of the song, and like every fill is different, but the bass and the drums are like perfectly in sync with all the fills. So it's just everything is just so polished and so professional and just really great. And then the recording sound is fantastic. So there's a lot of good things in the album. So.
Yeah, we'll go to your number 13 next, which is "Hold Your Fire."
Yeah, when these albums first came out, I was a lot younger. My friends all hated these albums because they were so different than Moving Pictures and all the epic albums they had before that. But the material, I loved it. I just thought there was a lot of great material. Geddy's singing is phenomenal. I mean, his singing is so good on these albums. The drumming is really good, and there's less guitar, but it kind of opens up the sound a lot, so you can really hear the drum parts. There's more drums and there's more bass, and the sound is cleaner. When Alex is playing, it's very like a thin guitar sound, so you can really hear all the parts. And I thought this was a great album. There's this song, Mission, a spirit with a vision is a dream with a mission. And it's just like a lot of great songs on it. But again, there are other songs I like, but it's a solid album.
Yeah, I had this number 13 as well. We won't go to Sean's number 13 just yet. Overall, I think this is a better collection of songs versus Power Windows. I like Force 10, which is a good opening commercial rocker. I like Neil Peart's independence of his limbs that he shows on Time Stands Still, and I also enjoyed the addition of Amy Mann's vocals on that song, giving it some higher parts. Great original bass line on Open Secrets and some introspective lyrics. This is one of my favorites off that record.
Amazing guitar solo. It's like he has this huge bending note in Open Secrets guitar solo. Really beautiful.
Yep, I love the enigmatic lyrics around Prime Mover. The point of a journey is not to arrive, which also happened to be quoted in a John Myung lyric a few years back after Neil Peart died. He quoted Neil Peart in that. Love Geddy's soulful vocals on Time Stands Still. I love the fact that he goes up a couple octaves, which he hasn't really done since much. Tyshawn and High Water are kind of low points on the album, being a little bit of a
one thing about Tyshawn, a lot of people say that's a terrible Rush song, but there's really a cool guitar part that Alex puts to that. It's really interesting. I mean, the lyrics, but the guitar part I thought was really amazing. So I wouldn't say it's a terrible Rush song, but
yeah, not one of my favorites.
Yeah,
but not one of their stronger efforts.
Yeah.
So right now we'll go to Sean's number 13, which is Grace Under Pressure. Take it away, Sean.
Okay, yeah, just to dovetail on good comments there about good points. I mean about Hold Your Fire. Some great songs on there. It's just you got to appreciate the songwriting, whoever you are. But I think for some people, I guess your friends just didn't like the lack of.
It was so different. It was so different.
Okay. All right. So my number 13 is Grace Under Pressure. This album is significant because this is the first album they did without Terry Brown after using him for whatever it was, 5, 6, 7 albums. Backstory here is that Peter Henderson had produced Breakfast in America by Supertramp, which is a phenomenal sounding commercial rock album, which I'm sure you guys have heard. That album garnered several Grammy nominations, including Album of the Year in 1980. So by hiring Henderson, apparently Geddy Lee wanted Rush to take the next step from being a prog rock band to a more successful commercial rock band, just extrapolating here from what I've seen. I like the more guitar-oriented sound of this album, even if it would take a back seat on subsequent albums. There isn't the real heavy bottom end that you have on Moving Pictures, but to my ears, the sound is much better and more balanced than on Signals or Power Windows. I think they did a great job of capturing Neil's drumming on this. There's a lot of tasteful fills to enjoy, maybe more so on any other Rush album. If you're a drum fanatic or a big Neil Peart fan, this is probably an album you're going to love. After Image has a really cool instrumental middle section between the the 2:30 and the 4-minute mark, where Alex gets some space to do a really cool interlude. However, I feel like there was a chance for Alex to really make a statement there, but he doesn't really quite step up. Um, so I'm not sure what you guys think of that, but the highlight of this album for me is The Enemy Within. The song has a great intense feel to it with Geddy Lee's ambitious bass line, and Geddy shows you here that he is better than any bass player at grabbing you as the listener and basically carrying the song. You hear a lot of Andy Summers influence on this album, on Alex Lifeson's playing in this song in particular, and throughout the album with that ska rhythm guitar feel that he has. The intensity of the verse on this song is contrasted by a great melodic section of the chorus. Again, the melodic section is nicely complemented with an emphasis on Neil's tasteful drumming. Red Lenses has a really cool instrumental breakdown part where we hear Neil using the electric drums, which I guess everybody was using back then. Like even guys like Bill Bruford switched to that, so it wasn't anything different, but it's cool that you can go back and listen to that and hear him use that. So I think if you want to hear Neil's genius as a drummer, this is the song for you. Neil Peart's drum virtuosity is on full display here, and it's phenomenal. But he does all this stuff in the context of the song. No need to talk about the two popular songs because I think enough's been said about that. But I think this has some really good deep cuts, and if people just think of this as oh well, it has distant early warning. I think you're really missing out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I have this higher on my list. One of the
Okay.
reasons I have it higher on my list is that track 5, the one that goes 1-0-0. I think that's
Body Electric.
Body Electric. Yeah, that's probably my favorite song off the album right now. I don't know why that is. It's got some interesting snare drum work. It's got some great vocals on Geddy. It's obviously got a really cool bass line that, like Sean, you said, he always grabs the listener and brings them in and gives them some type of jazzy or funky feel that you just don't hear anywhere else. So that's Sean's number 13, I guess. Right now we'll go to
Well,
Barry's.
can you say
All right,
one?
yeah, go ahead, jump in.
So I've ranked this album higher, and I think you had mentioned it last time, Neil. I went back and listened to it again, and this album is so cohesive. Like every song, like you couldn't put any song on this album on a different album because they all they sound similar. Like the whole album has a certain sound to it, and the songs all fit so well together. And there's a lot of good songs. The song Between the Wheels is a fantastic song.
Yep.
And you got to go back. That's just like such a perfect song at the end. So there's just a lot of really good songs on this one. I had it ranked higher. I think this is really a good one.
All right, so your number 12 is Test for Echo. So I'll
Yeah.
share my screen and I'll bring that album cover back. This one obviously starts with what Sean said. He talked about the O.J. Simpson trial and the media's effect on society and whatnot.
Yeah. And this is one I just, listening through it, just so many good songs. I tended to bump it up a little bit, but yeah, that's about where it is.
All right. So that brings us to that. So Sean, this is also, that's your number 14. I had this number 11. But right now we'll go to if you guys are done talking about Test for Echo for now, we'll go to my number 12, which is Vapor Trails. I know that's a little bit of a surprise to you guys. This one has resonated with me probably more in recent years. However, I think great thing about this album is that it showcases Alex Lifeson, and there were some albums where Alex seemed a little bit lost, and he really kind of comes out of his shell in this one. It's a heavy emotional album, even as a listener. I know it took over a year or so to write and record it. I know Alex and Geddy were both very concerned about Neil during the pre-production and the recording of the album. I think it's pretty cool that Neil comes out in the first track with an aggressive double bass drum to open the album. Neil's lyrics are, of course, poignant throughout. I think it's also important that Geddy had to adjust them at times to make them a little bit less less impersonal, or more personal, more listenable, maybe not as jarring. Secret Touch is one of my favorite songs off the album, with a soulful bass line by Geddy. He hits a higher octave than what's normal for someone his age. Also like the proggy and whiny guitars on both Vapor Trail and Sweet Miracle. And those are some of the highlights for me. And I think Alex really dug deep on this album. I know he did a lot of overnight sessions. I know they did some unique things recording it. I think that when they remixed it and remastered it, I think that was for the better. I think that the guitars and the drums both sound a little bit more controlled. I think everything just sounds a little bit better balanced. And I really do think this was really a great album for Alex to really shine. And I think it's a great way to immerse yourself if you were to read the lyrics while listening to the album, as opposed to just listening to it casually. Really gives you a really rare perspective on someone's life experience.
So I got a few things to say on this
Yeah, go
one.
for it.
So first of all, I mean, obviously Neil went through terrible personal tragedies before this album. So the album is deep. I mean, the lyrics are deep. Almost every song has like really deep personal stuff in it. Like the song How It Is, there's a lot of really deep personal stuff in that. And the guitar playing, well, first of all, the initial recording, I prefer the initial recording, but there are problems. And you basically could call this album like a wall of sound. Like sometimes there's so many guitar tracks on top of each other. It's just gigantic. I mean, the amount of work that Alex Lifeson put into this album, it's incredible. I mean, the amount of guitar parts he kind of put together, layering them on one on top of the other, it's really, some of them, it's mind-boggling. And I just thought, from an Alex Lifeson perspective, this is the most awesome Rush album. I mean, he just did so much stuff on this album. It's just incredible. And I think a lot of it is just fantastic writing. I mean, the Earthshine song is incredible. And it's deeper. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know how to put it, because there are flaws in the album. Like, it's hard, the first original recording is hard to listen to, because it's just like the amount of sound is overwhelming, right? Like, Geddy Lee has multiple vocal parts on every song. There's 2 or 3 or 4 guitar parts on different songs. Neil Peart is like completely no holds barred. Like, he's over drumming it on a lot of songs, but it's all so great. And the problem is sometimes it's like overwhelming the album. Like, I think a lot of people were overwhelmed by this. Like, listening to it, it's really hard to stomach the whole thing. But the more you listen to it, there's just like so many fantastic guitar parts. The singing is fantastic. Geddy's singing on this is fantastic. Neil Peart's drumming is incredible. And there's just so many great songs. Literally, like, every song on the album is really interesting. But again, like, the thing that's going to turn people off is just like, there's a lot of guitar. It's like a wall of sound listening to this.
Yeah, and they're like, admittedly, they when he went into, I think it was when Geddy went in to master the record or mix it, Neil and Alex were both on vacation, and whoever he went into the studio with to mix it, and I might be getting the mixing and the mastering confused, but when they did that step, Geddy was on his own. The person that came with him, whoever that was, had a cold and couldn't hear, and Alex and Neil were both on vacation, and they had just had enough of this record because it was very draining to write and record it and produce it. And so they were kind of out of it. And then I think Geddy got sick, and he was trying to do some of it over the phone. So I think it is a lot to listen to when it comes to the original mixing and mastering. It is a lot to listen to. It's it's
Right.
like a wall of sound.
Yeah.
And just listening to the drums remixed and remastered, they sound a little bit more controlled. And I think there's a couple other albums from this era that they were using a technique. I forget what it was called. I forget what the details of it. But Metallica made a similar mistake on one of their recordings with can't remember the name of the album. It came out in 2008. And Californication by Red Hot Chili Peppers had some similar problems because they tried to basically just get too much out of the technology. They were trying to pump up the sound a little bit too much. So I think the remixing was a good idea, and is a net positive.
Yeah.
So that's my number 12, Trails. We'll go to, what do you guys want to do? Sean, you want to do your number 12, 2112? Go for it.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. I have a few things to say about Vapor Trails, but I'll hold off on that.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
I have some more things to say too, but maybe we'll come back to it because I got it higher up.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
It's gonna be. We all have these things ranked. Okay, so 21. My number 12. 12. I really didn't know where to put this one. Me and Barry were talking about this on Christmas. So it's this one's really hard to compare it to anything else. I mean, we know it's better than, at least a little bit better than Caress of Steel. But after that, this was kind of what put them in the right direction. But it's kind of hard to figure out where to put this one. So I really didn't know where to put this. So I put it at number 12. So sometimes it seems like more of an EP than an LP. Something for Nothing is a really great closing track. There's a great mix on this album between Alex's acoustic guitar to open the track, some tasteful bass playing, and the great dynamics. Definitely one of Rush's underrated songs. Something for Nothing I'm talking about. You can hear how Neil Peart's drumming on this album is so influential on guys like Portnoy. Personally, I'm a sucker for these long 20-minute epic pieces. So I love the title track. I love the production on it. I think Alex Lifeson really steals the show on this one, with Neil's complemented by Neil's drumming. And as much as anything, I think these are some of his best solos. In terms of like the significance of this song, when you hear these bands like Dream Theater and Symphony X write these 20, 25-minute songs, this is really what they started with. Everybody in those bands was a Rush fanatic when they were in their formative years. So we hear songs like Change of Seasons or Divine Links of Tragedy by Symphony X, and it all started here with 2112. So I think it's a really significant album for that reason. So that's my number 12.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, great album. I thought this this is one of the ones Getty points to as a kind of like a monumental album in their catalog, and that's because of the title track 2112. This set them on a new course. It kind of defined prog rock in the 1970s. I think it's basically, you could argue it's the definitive Rush song, 2112. So that's why I have it higher, but I can get to more of my comments a little bit later.
This was kind of like a make or break album for them, because after Caress of Steel, they're lucky they got to do another album, because Caress of Steel wasn't very successful, and then they came out with this, and I mean, it must have been life changing for those guys to go from pretty much not really sure if you're going to make it as a professional rock band to having like a monster album.
Yeah, part of that I would argue is just the nature of the business back then. I mean, you had to put out an album like every 6 months back then. If you look at the chronology, I mean, this thing came out in March of '76, while their last one had come out like 6 months prior. If you take, let's say you take Fly By Night, Anthem, By Tour and the Snow Dog, and The Necromancer, that would be your side one, right? Your side two of this, amalgamated album for the. It could be like Something for Nothing, Bastille Day, Lakeside Park, and then you finish with 2112. I mean, that would be a great album.
Right.
And that's basically just like 2 years worth of writing for them, and you'd have this phenomenal album. So it seemed like, they were being kind of pushed by the record company to put these albums out maybe before they were ready.
That's one thing that I kind of liked. I thought their last few albums deserve more credit because they have so much material on it. Like, I mean, if you look at some of their later albums, have to be almost twice as long as some of the earlier ones. I wish I have like a length of time on all the albums, but something like Vapor Trails. I mean, there's 13 songs on Vapor Trails, and
Yeah,
they're all
Vapor Trails is 67 minutes, whereas 2112 I think is like 39 minutes. I can
Yeah, it's pretty much, it's a lot longer.
So a lot more material went into these albums, and a lot more work, and a lot more production.
Yeah, so your number 11, Barry, is Power Windows.
Power Windows, yeah.
So I'm gonna share my screen and show that that backside of the album there. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we kind of went through this. I just think I would like to rank it higher because I love this album so much. It's just the other ones that I have, I like more. And there's another album that I didn't put in number 11. I pushed that up higher just because it's just got like a song that's so great, and I ended up having to push Power Windows down. But this is an album that I love. I mean, the quality, there's so many great songs on the album, and it's a lot of positive things to say about this one.
All right. So that'll take us to Sean's number 11, which is Snakes and Arrows. And we'll go back to that, and I'll share my screen for Sean. Take it away, Sean. You're number 11, Snakes and Arrows.
All right, so Snakes and Arrows. This is produced by Nick Raskalenitz. I'm not sure if I'm I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So they got rid of their last producer, who had worked with them on Vapor Trails, and they hired Nick Raskalenitz, who would do this one, and he also did the last 3 Alice in Chains albums, which are all really good albums, by the way. So he stepped in here.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, just because this producer. Sorry, I just wanted to add this little anecdote. I saw this thing where they were interviewing the producer of this album, and they were asking him what it was like to have Rush call you up and ask you to produce this album, and he was just like, it was just like blown away. Like, it's just like this miracle is dropping into my lap, where I get to produce. I mean, Rush was a pretty big band before this album came out, and I guess this guy was like an up and coming producer at the time, and Rush reached out to him to have him do the production, and he just was completely blown away by the opportunity.
And it was a younger guy too, much younger than the band members, I believe. I think he was in his 30s or something at the time.
Yeah,
young guy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so he's I'm not sure who he should have done this as part of my research here. I'm not sure who he had produced prior to that, but I know he's been the producer for as I said, for the last 3 Alice in Chains albums. So so he's their new producer on this one. I like this. This has got some really cool songs on it. Neil Peart does some really interesting drumming on Armor and Sword. Even though the song sounds like it's in 4/4, he adds his own complex touch to it, which, if you enjoy good drumming, this is a good song to listen to. Seems like only something that you would hear Neil Peart do. The highlight of this album for me is Hope and Faithless. That's it's 2 songs right in the middle of the album. Although the chord progressions are different, both songs are in the key of D major. So for me, this is really one song is Hope, which is the only thing you hear in that song is Alex Lifeson's acoustic guitar. This serves as the lead-in, which sets up the more dramatic Faithless. It's not a complex song at all. It's probably one of the most simple songs in Rush's catalog, but it's so memorable for the great lyric where Neil basically declares himself an agnostic or maybe an atheist. I don't know. And he talks about how he's not a religious man, but he has his own morality that he lives by, and that loving other people is really the faith that he lives by. There's a beautiful bridge section on this one that leads to that dramatic chorus where Neil gives us his declaration about how he lives his life. Really nice guitar solo by Alex Lifeson. I think this is the kind of song that an album like Test for Echo could use, but maybe they didn't have the inspiration at that point. This is one of Rush's great songs to me. The album finishes super strong with a 1-2 punch of the instrumental Malignant Narcissism and the closer, We Hold On. I really enjoy the instrumental parts on both of these songs, especially on We Hold On. So Snakes and Arrows is my number 11.
Yeah, We Hold On. That's a great song. And the producer, he was from the Foo Fighters.
Oh,
he
right,
was.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, younger guy. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
My last, I guess the last one we'll talk about is my number 11, which is Test for Echo. Sean, I think you made a good point. This was the only this was a new Rush album for 6 years or so, because it was 6 years before releases. So I did listen to this album quite a bit, and it's higher on my list probably because of that. I like a lot of things about this album. Although it's not a fan favorite, I think it's very listenable. Sometimes I think it lacks direction, but I think overall the songs are pretty good. I like the fact that Neil went off and studied with Freddie Gruber, who I believe was a jazz musician, a jazz drummer, and he started using the traditional grip as opposed to the match grip. He had more of a tapping sound on this record instead of just the normal pounding that rock drummers have, which was kind of a nice change. He only did it for one album. Love his double bass on the opening track. I love the fact that on Carve Away the Stone, which is the last song, Neil plays a even time pattern while Alex and Geddy play an odd time rhythm, which I think is kind of interesting. I think that works. I like the instrumental with some melodic backing vocals by Geddy and some keyboards, which were used just for texture as opposed to being overdone on some previous records. I like Half the World. I think that's a fun pop song. I thought it was an interesting lyrical theme, and I like the classic rock sound of just guitar, bass, and drums on that one. I think Neil has one of his signature fills on Totem, I believe it is, where he kind of turns the listener upside down in the middle of the song. I like that. I thought the internet dating song, Virtuosity, was kind of interesting. Virtuality, sorry. Yeah, where he talks about net boy.
A little
net
dated.
girl.
A little dated.
It's dated, but it's interesting to listen to
Yeah.
it now and think how people thought back then. And I remember Neil saying on his drum video, he said, "Well, what's a virtual song, and who would want to dance to it?" Thought that was kind of pretty cool lyric. So that's my number 11, Test for Echo.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So that's it, boys. Anything else for session number 2, Rush, 11 through 15?
No, yeah, thanks for putting this together. It gets harder and harder. It really does get harder and harder.
Yeah. All right. So we'll sign off for now, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take
All
care.
right, see you guys.
Peace.